So that's one thing that the politics. I have a couple of sheets of the Civil War and abolition, which is the next political phase. So this one by Henry C. Walk. Henry C. Walk is was an abolitionist. He was a John Brown type abolitionist, who wrote music. This is 1863, but I really love this because it's black troops, who were a new thing, firing at this running away Confederate officer, and it's Babylon.
Yeah, Babylon is fallen.
And it's interesting how Babylon persists as a term for the bad state.
Yeah, this is 1840. Wow.
No, that's 63.
1863.
That's during the Civil War.
Okay.
And what you were just saying about James Bland and carrying me back to old Virginia, after the Civil War, there was 11 years of Reconstruction where African Americans had the vote, some were senators in the South, all sorts of things, because the Union troops were still there enforcing it for quite a long time. And you gradually start to see sheets that are saying, yes, but it was better in the old days. Oh, so this one is from 1872, which is quite early, and they're always older African Americans. There's one called "The Banjo Hangs Silent on the Door because I have no fun anymore now that Master has gone," and that's the sentiment. So you're actually starting to seep this into, it was better, it wasn't that bad really, almost like Florida saying that slavery, the textbook in school saying that slaves may have got some benefits from slavery. So the school textbook in Florida.
I like he's got Charlie Howard on his trousers leg. Yes. The old home ain't what it used to. Come on.
You got the steamboat.
The Georgia minstrels.
And that's code.
Okay.
Minstrels, if it just says minstrels, it's white. If it says Georgia minstrels, it's code for black minstrels. And there were an awful lot of black minstrel troops that formed after the American Civil War. Some blacked up as well, but others didn't. But they were all called Georgia minstrels. So you knew who you were going to see.
As opposed to original Georgia minstrels.
Well, no, just minstrels. Yeah.
Okay.
But the Georgia was a code word. So this was a companion song to the old folks at home, which is another one of these. It would carry me back to old Virginia.
Yeah.
So there's this period in the 1870s, early 80s, where it's not right, it's all wrong down there, and we don't like it, and it's different. And so the song sheets reflect this feel. And then after Reconstruction, you get the South states starting to bring in the Jim Crow laws to enforce segregation as social control. And the sheet music that I didn't put any on because they can be so awful, and the language and the images, some of them we have got bad enough, but the sheet music starts to parallel.
Okay.
Because you're actually very keen to convince, this is unconscious, but it's interesting how it all happened. The sheet music is aimed presumably at white people, and one of the things that was really smashed was the populist movement in the 1880s, 1890s, where you had black and white sharecroppers working together to try and improve their situations, and the Georgia white cotton mill workers working with the field hands. So that was ruthlessly suppressed, just like in the Woody Guthrie songs, all the miners.
It's interesting you say that, because I always make a point of that myself when I hear stories about how you had white only and black only, and then they made it illegal for black people to marry somebody white. Now, why would you make it illegal? Why would you enforce it by law? Because people were doing it. You see what I'm saying? People were doing it. So you had to make sure it didn't happen. It had to stop. So you put a law in place because it was happening.
Yes. And there's plenty of evidence of that, isn't there, really?
Yeah.
Historically. And similarly from South Africa as well. The same sort of, we have to stop this immediately. And we've got back to the great race replacement conspiracies in the last 20 years, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other thing, of course, that was brought in to enforce this in the South was this. Forced convict labour. So you skew the laws so that it actually picks up an awful lot of African Americans for minor offences, and then you use them as free labour.
Yeah.
Railroads, convict camps, logging, turpentine camps, parchment farm.
Yeah. So this particular item we're seeing here says Asheville, North Carolina. So this is one of the postcards.
It is, and it's a chain gang. It's probably about 1910-ish. It's that era postcard just before the First World War.
And where did you pick this one up?
Well, they're all on eBay.
But this was at the early days of eBay when you could find it.
Yes, I mean, because this one would go very quickly.
Yeah.
And this one, which is similar, this is a real thing.
Okay.
$15 rewards for someone who escaped from his convict camp.
And has a wart under the nostril.
Yes, 5'11". I'll just measure you before.
Yeah.
But I mean, these were obviously sent out.
Yeah.
Because this man is a bad man who will come to the bad man when we look at balance, won't we?
Yeah.
So I think the political context, there's quite a lot that it shows you in the political context, particularly around women, I think, which we'll talk about later. And the other thing that I wanted to get across is how much the collection emphasises that this is an urban setting we're talking about, and people don't seem to, well, people forget what an urban setting, even in the South, it was. So this is a postcard of Memphis from 1909. It's heaving, and it's full of tram cars. There's hundreds of them. And the actual main street doesn't look very different, except that it's empty and just got tourists now. But it's heaving. It was the cotton capital. It was also the murder capital of the US before the First World War.
It's interesting because I think of Memphis. I think of Beale Street and Mr. Crump. Mr. Crump don't like it. He'll have it here.
Yes, and the other one were the Churches, who were the black family who owned huge amounts of Beale Street and were involved in all sorts of things. And,
that's right.
And here's another one, which I think is another city that's important, which is St. Louis.
St. Louis.
And there's the Duncan and Brady. Is it came up on their electric car?
Yeah, that's it.
So all the murder ballads from the 1890s are set in St. Louis.
How about that? Yeah.
Well, it's ragtime. So just behind that block was the red light district.
When they talk about the bully of the town.
Yes.
Which is
Duncan and Brady, Frankie and Albert, Stack of these shots. It's all happening just behind there.
Yeah. When they talk about
but it's in this urban environment.
Yeah.
It's not out in the cotton fields, and the songs were made up, and they're all true. And the other thing I was going to mention was you could get from Cairo in Illinois via St. Louis, Memphis, down to New Orleans in 3 days. And that was right from the middle of the century, Mark Twain era. It's like transport was much quicker. People were moving about a lot.
Yeah.
Ideas were moving about. Yes, there were rural people like there were in Europe that never went anywhere. However, there was this huge movement along the Mississippi, which is so important. And I chose that picture because it's the Kate Adams, which Charlie Patton sings about.
Yeah. Charlie Patton was a guitar player that recorded.
And it
in the
was
1920s.
it was gone by the time he recorded it, but he would have seen it in his youth.
Yeah.
I mean, Fred McDowell does one that's got the big wheel clashing in it. It's got steamships in it because they sort of limped on a bit. And then you forget also how important railroads were. So there's the black man in the crew that's keeping it, perhaps like the black man who wrote Casey Jones.
Yeah, Casey Jones. Yeah.
Song. But that's about that era. So there's a lot of other social things. I wanted to just show some of them, but I just wanted to start with this urban and transport theme, and you get that in the songs as well, which is
Railroad Blues.
that's Lucky Roberts. It was black, so he was a black. The music was black for this. Whoever wrote the
There was a lot of black
yes, awful
music, sheet music composers.
and the sorry, Michael, but and also the sheet music reflects events. So this is the St. Louis World Fair from 1904, and there's the St. Louis Tickle, and they're not so stereotype.
Yeah.
It's not, but there's a very famous track for the St. Louis Tickle.
Okay, here's the track.
Does this remind you of something?
Yeah. I ain't going that way. Sorry, boys.
It's also Funky Butt from New Orleans, isn't it? The early jazz track. Johnny Marr Morton did it, and it was supposed to be the band. But it's the same riffs, isn't it? I mean,
The St. Louis. Now, who was the recording that we just? Who
that
was this recording?
the Osmond Dudley Trio. So that's banjo. Not sure what the others are, but the guitar in there possibly, and something else. It's string trio.
1906.
That was recorded in 1906, but the actual music was 1904.
1904.
Yes. And the other thing, I'll do this bit, and then so other things that it reflects is social things. So here is one of the two hesitating blues that were published in 1915, one by W.C. Handy and one by sort of vaudeville duo, husband and wife. And this one was also recorded immediately by the Imperial Quartet, who were like white harmony singers, barbershop harmony singers. But it's like you ring up and talk to your girlfriend on the telephone, and here's the recording with Arthur Collins again.
Arthur Collins. So this is a cylinder machine.
No, this would be disc.
Disc, okay. Yeah, so we'll play that.
But it's exactly so. That's the Handy version, and that's the version that Gary Davis did, and all the others.
Reverend Gary Davis is a later guitar player that well known that played the Hesitation Blues that everyone.
Yes. And just one more thing on this one.
But that version was that version is more than 30 years earlier than the one that we know of Reverend Davis.
Because you get these rural survivals, don't you? And I'll show you why when we look at audience.
Okay.
Because of the tent shows, minstrel shows, and so on. And this one is an interesting one, I think, because it's the First World War, 1918, and the title of the piece is "The Kaiser's Got the Blues," and it's Handy and Pace,
which is a black-owned company.
Yes, so W.C. Handy, father of the blues, was based in Memphis until in his book he says he had one too many lynchings in Beale Street, So he left, they set up in Broadway in New York because obviously that was where Tin Pan Alley was, and it was much better to be in New York than Memphis. But I would just think that we've got a catalogue of blues, and they're 15 cents, and you begin to wonder ringtail blues, snaky blues, Death, Where Is Their Sting, which is another one of his sort of jokey ones. A Good Man Is Hard to Find. Lots of people recorded that. Hooking Cow Blues, that's one of his. So it's just like, this is big business.
Big business.
By 1918, it's big business.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm looking at Clarence Williams. He said the same. He was very close to W.C. Handy, and he moved to the Gaiety Building in New York as well, which is where all of the publishing houses was. And he said that he decided to leave Chicago because of the 1919 race riot. But Williams had the home of the blues. His publishing company was far larger than Handy's. He had the largest one of them all. So when you look at a lot of these kind of images, you'd be surprised to find that some of them was composed by black artists.
Well, I wanted to say about how important they were, and I did try and make a point if I saw one by a black songwriter getting it, because often they aren't blues or anything, but it's by the black songwriter. I was just going to mention when you said about Clarence Williams,
because he's very important. But the one that I find,
W.C. Handy was very good at self-publicity. Very good.
But the one that a lot of people found really interesting, that I found interesting as well when I looked into it, was the one by Ernest Hogan.
Yes.
Ernest Hogan, All Coons Look Alike to Me. And this was big. It was absolutely major. And he was criticized for it, but he used his success to do what he can to support people. Same as Clarence Williams. Clarence Williams looked out for a number of people. Willie the Lion Smith talks about how he would do whatever he could to help and assist not only black artists, but also white artists. And he published white artists as well. So it was really interesting to see these connections between the imagery, the stereotype, and how there were black people doing it too. Because this is what sold. And they were businessmen.
Oh yes, and these are New York shows.
Yeah.
These are New York shows. I'll come on to how important New York is when we look at dance. New York is driving this music. Nowhere else. New York. Boston had dropped out by the Civil War. Chicago hadn't really got going before it took off after the big jazz influxes, really.
Because Perry Bradford was in New York as well.
Yeah. They were all in New York. New York was the centre. The Tin Pan Alley actually started in the 1890s. There was a change in publishing techniques, which meant they could actually start to print photographs and colour. And that's when it exploded, the actual sheet music. For example, by 1900 there were 25,000 sheet music titles published a year.
Can you repeat that, please?
By 1900 there were 25,000 titles, different titles, published per year.
Per year?
Per year.
That's amazing.
So in a sense, this is a tiny part of all that.
Yeah.
But it's quite an important part in terms of shaping popular music.
What was the incomes of people around that time as well?
Well, the average income, I think, was about $1 a day for working class trades, up to $2 or $3 for a skilled carpenter or something. But when you come to the crazy blues and the recording industry, you can see how that impacted on the song. Right. Well, one of the things that I wanted to say about was how I suddenly noticed that what we're looking at is a change in the importance and the language used by female singers and the marketing of female singers. If I haven't done an actual count, but I would suspect that of the photographs, an awful lot of them are of female singers that are on selling the record, the sheet music, and some of them are very well known. And it also parallels the development of suffrage, women's emancipation, and sexualization too, in what's permissible and what isn't permissible.
Yeah.
And somehow using African American language means you couldn't get away with it, I think. But I wanted one of the very early songs, one of the very early females that was very famous was May Irwin, who was Canadian, and visited St. Louis a lot, and visited some of the early ragtime pianists, Tom Turpin in his Rosebud Bar, and she took Paderewski, the famous Polish concert pianist, to see him, I think. And one of her first songs in 1896, big hits, was the Bully song. I'm looking for the bully of the town.
Bully of the town.
And here's a picture of it. There are two versions. This one is slightly less offensive. The original one that was issued in newspapers is absolutely appalling and fits with what I was saying about the 1890s pushing segregation. But there she is. She's a large, formidable lady. And there's the bully with his razor and the other stereotypes. So I think that this one, Memphis Jug Band did it. Lots of people did this.
Yeah.
So
Paul Jeremiah. Paul Jeremiah.
Where he put the words into modern.
Yeah.
But I think it's the sort of thing that, because they're big hits at the time, people know them.
Yeah.
And then sing them to their children. Well, not necessarily the words. But then we've already seen her, which is I Wonder Where My Easy Riser's Gone. You must listen to the Frankie Jackson version. There's Sophie Tucker with Shelton Brooks. And
what year is this? I wonder where my Easy Riser.
1912.
1812.
And then by a beautiful postcard I've got of the Queen of Cakewalk, Ada Walker, as a star in her own right. And there's one of George I got as well. And then by 1915, you've got Joe Turner Blues.
Decent handy.
And then you've got being sold by, starting to get skimpier and different dresses.
Yeah.
And then by 1925, you've got Jelly Roll Morton, and you start to get
she's showing skin.
Yeah. And so I think you could find an interesting research topic of looking at how women's position, approach to sex and relationship, use of language, the actual songs are starting to reflect, drive, who knows, both of that. So I just think that was quite interesting, but we started with the bully one, because May Irwin was a coon shouter, and as Abbott and Seraph said, by 1912 coon shouters had become blues singers.
How about that? Thank you, John.